So my name is Puk Blokland and I'm working for B-Lab Benelux as a community builder. And I'm your host for this session today, calling in from my home in Amsterdam. Luckily, I have some amazing specialists with me here today. Paul van 't Veld, leadership facilitator and coach at THNK School of Creative Leadership, a Dutch B Corp. And I have Maria Grazia Testa with me, IDG practitioner and founder of The Best Journey Ever. And before I go into the session, I would like everyone to maybe type in the chat where you're calling in from, which company you're working for, so we see a little bit who is in the session with us today. So today's workshop will take you through the several points. I will start with some information on B-Lab and the B Corp movement. Then we will follow by a part on system change and the IDGs by Maria. Afterwards, we will take a deep dive into the IDGs, and then we will experience the IDGs in breakout rooms. And at last, we will give you a call to action to see what you can already start doing today in order to start your IDG journey. So we probably have quite some B Corps and B Labbers in the room that already know everything about the B Corp movement, but I would still like to quickly touch upon what we do at B Lab, what our mission is, and why we're hosting a session today. So a lot of people probably know us for certifying B corporations, but we do much more than that. B Lab is building a movement, the B Corp movement, to change our economic system. So B Lab began in 2006 with the idea that a different kind of economy was not only possible but necessary, and that businesses could lead this way to a different kind of model, a stakeholder-driven model. So this means that we move towards an economy in which businesses do not only think about their sales and their profits, but take into consideration the environment and all its inhabitants with every decision they make. And that's the reason why B Lab exists. So we are a systematic change organization with a vision of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system for all people and the planet. And that's also where the B stands for in B Lab and B Corp. It stands for benefit for all, because together as the B Corp movement, we're shifting the economic system from profiting only the few to benefiting all. Now you might wonder how we go about creating this system change, creating this shareholder economy. So we want to realize this change on 3 different levels. First of all, we want to change the behavior of business and the impact businesses has on all its stakeholders. And we do so by creating standards, tools, and programs so that businesses can measure, manage, and improve their impact on their social and environmental performance. And B Lab is also there for cultural change. So we want to change the norm and the culture of how people and the society sees business. So often businesses are seen as part of the problem, but we want people to see business as part of the solution. And then the last one is structural change. And this is really the policy and the legal side of the change, because beyond businesses that voluntarily take into account their impact on people and the planet, we also drive the creation and implementation of policy work, pushing for legal change around corporate social responsibility and social and environmental impacts. And this month, it's B Corp month, and that's a very special month for the B Corp movement, because it means B Corp month, and B Corp month is our annual global campaign in which B Corps from all around the world join together to celebrate what it means to be a B Corp. And this year, the theme is We Go Beyond, and it presents all the B Corps worldwide. I think already over 6,500 B Corps now that go beyond business as usual, that go beyond the status quo and take action to transform the economic system. And as the B Corp movement is growing and growing worldwide, it sparks more conversations around this new way of doing business. So during March, during B Corp Month, you will see lots of interviews, events, and workshops happening throughout the world, done by B Lab or B Corps that will help you to learn more about this new way of doing business. And of course, that's also why we're here today. Because today we're not here to talk only about the B Corp movement. Today we're here to learn more about and experience the inner development goals. So many of us are probably familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. But today in this workshop, we will introduce you to the inner development goals. And as the name already reveals, IDG is an initiative for inner development. And it aims to develop our inner capacity to be able to manage the increasingly complex environment that we're living in and all the challenges that we face. And now you might wonder why we as B Lab are hosting this session on IDGs today. Well, one thing we know for sure is that systemic change is neither simple or easy. It requires a large group of individual change makers to show up every day with leadership, with commitment and momentum. And therefore, it's critical that more and more of us grow and develop in our system change practices so that we have the ability to solve the wicked challenges we face today. So during this session, we want to provide you with the tools and the knowledge you need to drive that system change, both in your personal life, but also within your companies. Because yeah, we believe that through the inner development goals, you will gain a new set of tools to facilitate the inner shift and the human growth that is needed to increase our chances of a prosperous future for all. So in a nutshell, the purpose of today's session is for you to understand what the IDGs are and what their purpose is, and for you to understand how the inner work can help you better lead to change in the outside world. So with that being said, I would like to hand it over to Maria, who will explain a bit further why the IDGs are a systematic lever for change and how the IDGs came to be. So,
Wonderful. So my name is Maria Grazia Testa, and today I am here to talk with you about the Inner Development Goals, or IDGs, in non-profit organizations for inner development. We research, collect, and communicate science-based skills that are fundamental to the work we all do to reach the SDGs. Something about me. I have been directing global organizations in transition and transformation for 20 years, working in 6 different continents within the corporate world first, and later with the public and not-for-profit sector, going from global IT programs with multinational corporations to later collaborating with United Nations, the European Commission, local governments and the private sector, working on the protection of human rights, of cultural preservation, all the way to the implementation of the circular economy. I ask myself, like probably many of you here today, what I can do to help the world. I have one life, I have some needs, I clearly have some limitations, and I struggle to overcome them. But sometimes I manage. And then I ask myself how I can transpose that ability and multiply it, scale it up through others, and be of service to all of humanity from the boundaries of a single human life. My journey has led me to the inner development goals, and I truly believe that these skills, if trained profoundly and practiced, can make us as humanity cross this immense bridge that seems to separate us right now from peace, harmony, and life. So today we're going to visit the IDGs and understand, as POC said, why they're a systemic lever for change, how they came to be, and why institutions and the private sector suddenly are asking us to bring them to the center of the work we do together with the SDGs. We will also see how we can develop our professional abilities to help us realize more impact. But first, we have to go a little bit back and understand in which context the inner development goals came to be. So in 2015, as you all know, the SDGs were formed and adopted by all the United Nations members. It was an historical moment. For the very first time, humanity as a whole, all the countries representing more than 8 billion people worldwide came to a single vision for all of us, for all the future ahead of us. And this vision was comprehensive, inclusive, overarching of the planet, of the people, and of the economy. In spite of this, the progress towards the SDGs is not going as fast as needed, especially with the COVID pandemic and the exacerbation of wars globally. Progress has actually stopped altogether in the past 4 years. When we look at the SDG goal, peace and prosperity for all on the planet, we should have reached it by 2030. And now we are looking at least at a 40 years delay. Global inequalities rise. On one end, we have ever-growing profits. On the other, shocking scarcity. We are talking about sustainability more than ever. Yet this does not reflect on our ecological footprint. And at the same time, we are losing, keeping on losing biodiversity at a staggering rate. So here we are, you and me today, coming from very different places, but to the same crossroad. The way we are trying to change the world is not going to change, it's not going to work. And there is a reason for it. Today I will try to explain that very briefly. When we attempt change, there is a big mistake we incur into. We look at our system, the people, the planet, the economy as a mechanic system, not as what it is, an organic living one of which we are fully part. First, we tend to think that when things do not work, we can fix them, just like a machine replacing the broken part and expecting the whole machine to restart functioning properly. For example, we may have a new policy regulating equality or environmental impact. We add this part to the machine, which now performs the function that was missing, and now it should work just fine. But when we look at the system years later, we discover no real change at a systemic level has really happened. Another approach we may have is attempting replacing fully the old machine for a better one, destituting all its parts and building a new one in favor of our vision of the future. In the last decades, we had amazing revolutions that never happened. They were so brilliant, moving, unavoidably right. Yet today we still need to protest for the same exact reason, as we still invest almost half of our public and private money in long-chained dependency that cause wars, environmental destruction, social injustice. We cannot apply mechanic principles to the way a living system changes. And it's a good moment to ask ourselves, so what is the work that is really needed today? And do we have the capacity, do we have the conditions to do this work? This means being able to become aware, first of all, of what is the state of our humanity, its fragility, its basic needs, and how these are met, because this is the way we built the system we live in today. Surviving as a species in the ecosystem means that we need warmth and nutrition, so our home, energy, food, water, protection, relations, healing, and expression, creativity, arts, language. The first type of resources are limited and they are hidden. So our human history today has been a race to acquire them, competing to extract and exploiting them, accumulating and defending them. And great part of the structures that we have built in our systems, as well as in our psyche as individual, belong to this paradigm. We have made structures to take, accumulate, and defend what we have. Think about countries and their borders. Think about banks and currencies, organizational hierarchies, or think about your inner life, your fears, your need to be with those who are similar. We have commodified nature, and these structures are required to keep the transactions within this specific economy. Now we have extracted everything we could. All the resources are already in the cycle. So today's job is different. It's about distributing them, learn how to keep them in the loop, to transform them continuously, to simplify their access. And this is complicated. If you apply the mindset that was taking, accumulating, and defending, definitely we're not going to get there. The structures we have developed are not going to function if we want to imagine a new system of sharing, giving access, and opening up possibilities to everyone. As we fail in this, the system gets ill, and us with it. Lancet estimates that between 1990 and 2020, the increase of mental illness has been of 50% in the global population, with the richest North Americans amongst the highest in the increase. Today's biggest resource is really immaterial, and it's knowledge. So complex that we can only develop it if we work radically together. The second thing we discover as we become aware of our current situation is complexity. We don't start from a clean slate, but from a very complex ecosystem with subsystem processes, a multitude of diverse stakeholders, all active in the existing processes as we speak, performing actions, gaining knowledges, specializing continuously, and an immense amount of resources flowing through this system. We try to challenge the way of working and living of all these actors, while at the same time we're trying to move resources to new patterns, to new systems. We need to appreciate this complexity in all its aspects and also remember that we are fully part of it. Our human needs, our small lives, our personal limitations, and our imagination and fears, they have all been forged in the old system, and they all reflect something we already know. So every time we need to give birth to a new system, it's an evolutionary jump. The change in the collective is organically related to the change in the ecosystem, but also to the change in the single person, in you. It is in this context of fragility and complexity, but also the requirement for radical collaboration that the European Parliament on June 23rd last year issued a resolution on the implementation. So we are talking about the delivery, the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. In basically half of the chapter on the financial and budget investments required, the European Commission speaks about education, multiple literacies, SME training, emotional intelligence and resilience, community engagement in promoting the skills that humanity requires and which are not taught in school to change the world. The resolution speaks literally of disseminating these skills, people to people, engage everyone. It is here that we find the mentioning of the IDGs as an initiative recognized as the greatest and maybe the only possible accelerator of the SDGs. Institutions are finally acknowledging that we are falling behind systemically. And if the situation is clear and dear to all of us and we still fail, it means we need to start looking at the human factor which produced the problem in the first place. Get back to the basics of us as humanity, to the quality and skills which allowed us to be here in the first place. What we call evolution. The IDG framework asks the basic questions of what type of qualities and skills are needed to successfully work with complex issues. Evolution is telling us that we don't need a better world, but we need to be better for our world. And in this crucial change, leadership must be everyone. The house is burning. The people inside the house need to decide how to spend the last, or maybe the next 3 minutes. The movement of the IDGs started in Stockholm in 2019. A group of experts writes the Growth That Matters Manifesto, which states the urgent need to work systemically with psychological and cognitive growth in adults to meet the accelerating complexity of the world changes. Surveys are distributed worldwide to ask the people who know which human qualities they have witnessed making the difference in impact consistently. Cognitive and neuroscientists, experts in adult development, researchers, psychologists, HR, sustainability experts, but also activists, coaches, social entrepreneurs answer this question. The result are a number of skills which cannot be missed, but that luckily can be trained. To be able to imagine, communicate, pursue, and realize complex systemic impact. We are now at phase 3 of the surveys. We are now trying to gather data also from the Global South and Asia. And we are aiming at 100K responses and more than 100 universities still contributing more data to the current framework and the current knowledge we have. In March 2022, the IDGs Global Alliance was launched, which gathered heads of state and governments, ministers, senior officials from the academia, foundations, civil society organizations, all together agreeing and committing to develop the human skills it takes. This led in June to the European Parliament resolution, which we have already mentioned. Several organizations in the private sector have already become institutional or collaborating partners of IDGs, and learning circles on what comes out of the application of the skills are already available. We had in January IKEA sharing their learnings, Ericsson, which actually adopts the training on the skills in their young talent training and engagement pool, but also Google that runs an IDG lab. We will see more as more and more we train and practice the IDGs. The community is an open source, open access community. That means we are all volunteers. It's already reached more than 200 hubs worldwide, and it's growing. We practice the skills, we bring people together, we innovate, we prototype, we come from all forms of background, and we ally with partners who want to fund the initiative, share stories, and prove the success of the integration of the IDGs with the SDGs. These hubs build networks amongst them, which are thematic. Like some of them are working on the accessibility of the tools, others on the research required or the impact monitoring and evaluation. Others are practitioner networks or geographical networks that try to localize and make relevant the findings of the frameworks globally. So I'm very excited about this, and I will now ask Paul. Paul, I think that a lot of these changes that we see in great systems also happen in our individual lives. You know something about it.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everyone. We have quite a full house, and I was looking through the chat. I saw you're all over the world, and that's exactly what we need, of course. To make change happen in all regions, countries, the whole globe. So super that you made time to join us. I'm from THNK, a School of Creative Leadership in Amsterdam, and we have been guiding and supporting leaders and change makers like you for more than 10 years now in making change happen and do good. And some of my colleagues are also joining today. I saw some familiar faces, so hello. And if you talk about change, it's constantly, we are in constant change, and inner development goals are about you. So how do you take leadership, even if you have a small element of a bigger organization? How can you take personal leadership? It starts with knowing yourself and knowing what change means and how you experience it. So we thought we're going to do a warm-up exercise, a small exercise in pairs. We're going to send you shortly into a breakout for 10 minutes. In pairs, you meet someone lovely and you can share each 5 minutes what is currently in transition in your life. So which part in your life is in transition? It could be something personal. Maybe you just got a baby and that makes that your life is completely upside down now. You have to get used to the new type of life. Maybe it's something in the organization that you changed structure, that you got into a new position where you can make more impact. Whatever works best for you, but share with each other which part of your life is in transition currently. And if we're ready, then we can send you out for in total 10 minutes. Make sure you each get a chance for 5 minutes to share which part of your life is in transition and choose an example that speaks to you. Good to go, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back, everyone. And I hope you had a nice sharing of where you are in transition. And that's the magic of Zoom as well, the random encounters. We trust that you meet exactly that person that you need to meet today. Maybe if you want to continue the conversation, find each other later on. I'm also curious, if you want to share, feel free to write it in the chat, which part of your life is in transition and what is it about. So if you want to write in the chat, you want to share that, feel free to. And let's also move to the next part. And Sylvie, thanks. Exactly. I hope you met the right person at the right moment to continue a conversation. Handing over back to Maria to go a little bit deeper into the IDGs. Maria.
Thank you very much, Paul. So The question everybody asks is, what do I do in my business with the IDGs? How do they work in practice? How do I bring them into my organization? It's a very difficult question, but today I hope I will share with you some ways to think around how to bring, first of all, the IDGs in the first part of the system, which is yourself, and then to go from there to back to your organization and to your teams, also with some possible changes. So these are the 5 dimensions across which the 23 skills are organized. In the next slides, we will go through each one of the skills with a very simple approach. So on the left side, you will see the skill. At the center of the slide, you will see some questions you can start asking yourself to see how you are doing around that specific quality. It's difficult to appreciate if we have matured as a quality or not, but we will try with some poking questions. And in the last part, on the right side, what areas of your organization you can look at to see if you are actually integrating principles that are based on take, accumulate, defend, or on open up, do more with less, give access to everyone. So let's start with being. So being really is asking us to check what is our intention. Very often our immediate reactions or our desires are moved by the take, accumulate, defend mindset. We justify that as normal because we are used to it. But it also means that we cannot really be open, willing, and participate with sincerity. So the training of these skills allows us gardening our inner life, developing and deepening our relationship to our own thoughts, our body, our feelings, and understanding where they're coming from. It's about being present and knowing what goes on inside, not being reactive when we face complexity. When we look at ourselves, when we formulate our purpose and what we really want, how much of what we say is actually based on conforming, expecting validation? How much is it something you would really get out of bed every day to go and do? When you are in the unknowing phase of a change, stuck in between the past and the future, and you still don't know what's going to happen, do you give way to fear, frustration? Do you resort to quick fixes to get out of that discomfort and sometimes even clash with your integrity or your inner compass in order to find a quick way out? When you attend meetings, do you think of what you can get out of them for yourself and your team? Or do you think of what you can share, what you can give, what you can learn? Now back to business. How do we bring that back? Some ideas, some possibilities. Are your vision and mission, your values, something your company prepared to brand and sell more? Or do you actually practice them in daily life? Does your vision include your workers? Does your organization think of how, as an organization, it will have affected the life of the people that work for it in 20 years from now? Do you think about how your organization affects the fabric of society? Do you have in your board somebody who represents the SDGs you are fighting for? So for example, if it's number 2, hunger, no hunger, do you have in your board one person, someone who lives through that condition? Have you placed one of these people in a position to steer the compass where the discussion takes place? Let's go to the next one, thinking. Thinking is about the capacity to develop rich, encompassing, possibility of change. We rush very often to design solution before we even know the complexity or we have the complete picture. We very often decide to ignore parts for the sake of efficiency. And then we spend the remaining 80% of our time dealing with the parts we decided to ignore. I think you know this feeling. So the training here is about developing the capacity to take different perspectives, evaluating information objectively and thoroughly, and understand complexity. What you can ask yourself is, am I afraid to say that I simply do not understand something because it's too difficult for me alone, and to ask for help? Are you willing to think through and appreciate the dependencies and repercussions of your personal actions and take responsibility for those? Are you ready to sit with people who are the opposite of you, truly, in order to come together to solutions that can be comprehensive? And in business, you can ask, how often do I meet my competitors to design together a more sustainable approach and create collaborations? Does my product or service stop when somebody buys it? Or have I also designed into it the behavior the buyer is going to have, and how the buyer, thanks to my product, thanks to my service, is going to have a positive impact on humanity and the planet? Is your leadership trained, all your labor trained on systems change, or do they just use the words very often? Let's move to the next, to relate. Relating teaches us that as system changers, unless our change is comprehensive of all the parts, it will fail. But often we exclude others because we do not feel that they are our problem. Our is a concept matured within the accumulate, defend, acquire more system. So the training here is about opening our mind, connect with people who are very different from us, two different contexts, and be open to feel their problems as ours, to learn to extend then this capacity to more than just humans, and even feel that the biosphere problem is our problem. When you think about it in your own life, you can have the courage, for example, to wonder about your sense of humility. Do you sometimes think that your own pains are bigger than anybody else and others should focus much more on your problems than the other way around? Or do you have the courage to see the connectedness, the dependencies between what you do and what others live through? Do you think that your battery, the battery of your car, means that some other children die in a cobalt mine? I know it's difficult, but that's the kind of questions we need to be open to ask if we want to feel something for the pain of someone else. And in business, we can look at our diversity, equity, and inclusivity model. Have we examined the conditions of work, diversity, equity, and inclusion of our entire supply chain? Or have we just looked at some quick wins, like adding pronouns? Have we scanned the salary distribution across our organization to see if salary conditions create equality across it? And have we done the same with the supply chain from where we take our provisions? Are salaries disclosed? Why not? What are we trying to say? What do we suggest by deciding not to disclose them? Let's go into communication and collaboration. So this is the next skill. So systems change, again, teaches us that if change takes place following the action and the leadership of just a few, it is not sustainable. As soon as these people get out of the pictures, everything they have built falls apart, disgregates. So how do we bring everyone to be a leader, to be an active part of the change? These qualities are the social skills to communicate, work, and achieve results with people very different from us, with different motivations, values, competencies. When people do not collaborate with us with passion, it's not about motivating them with more gratification, but it's about finding out what their true motivations are and cultivating them, appreciating them. So we can ask ourselves, can I collaborate in a democratic way? Can I listen to everybody equally? Or do I feel much better if I have a role, if I have a position from where to speak to others? Am I really inspiring others? Am I really inspired myself? How do I bring that into what I do? Have I made efforts to understand the people who are very different from me? Or do I easily stereotype and judge? Well, in business, this could be like something like this. What kind of skills are you promoting? Who gets to the next leadership position? Those who have a lot of people willing to work with them in the organization, or those who have a boss who likes to work with them the most? Don't be surprised if things don't happen very fast, because these changes take time, and even changing one little lever can liberate a lot of resources. But if you can, look at your operating model. Is it the spit image of a beehive or of a production belt? And this takes us to action. The last one, driving change is the quality we train with acting skills. We live in a very disembodied society, and this dimension, especially in our culture, is not very developed and suffers. True agency, being in the front line, not giving up when we are met with the lack of sympathy, is what we train here. If your work and ideas are not appreciated, are you still able and willing to keep on going without too much bitterness? Are you doing something to cultivate your uniqueness? Do you enjoy when others are completely unconventional, independent, original? Are you brave and show up, speak up, walk the talk? Do you have faith? And is your organization seriously looking at the incentives and where they're placed? When you do performance reviews, do you ask people only about the dollars, or do you ask them what impact they want to make and how to measure that? Same for career development. Is just about the jobs I will do in the future, or is it about the legacy each employee would like to leave behind? We can use metrics about impact, and to decide what success means based on that at the individual level also means changing completely the fabric of what your organization is inspiring, containing, and empowering. So, to finalize, I hope this was a useful inception and that will generate even more when you get back. Remember that these skills require specific training and practice. So they're not just nice inspirational concepts. Pick maybe one or two of the ins and start seeing how it can be discussed in your business, approached in your business. Do some experiments, see where they take you and your organization. Try to build systems that facilitate access, that facilitate emergence, that facilitate optimism, facilitate sharing, and doing more with less. So I think that is what we could do in a session today, but Paul will make it very practical now. Paul, isn't it?
Thanks, Maria. For the last part of this session, we're going to have to put a lens on what change actually means. So Maria took us through the systemic change that is needed and the complex challenges that are ahead. And one of the things one of the most important reasons that the inner development goals have been developed is that we need to hurry up with change. Now, how we as human beings deal with change is something different. Change, how we deal with that as human beings, has its own rhythm and pace, and it's an individual process. So it's not that easy. However, if you want to really work with the inner development goals, you also have to acknowledge the fact that people deal differently with change. And first, make a difference between change and transition. So let me show you this. So change is external. It can happen super fast and there's no escape. We have to deal with it. And especially the dealing is what we call transition. It's an internal process and it usually takes much longer. So change is happening whether we wish for it or not. And it's quick. It could be a move to another country. It could be a breakup in a relationship. It could be losing a job or getting into a new structure in an organization. Both organizational and personal change is just happening. And then transition is a deeper process. It's a psychological process where we have to let go of the things we were used to do in a certain way, and we have to change it. And that is a process that internally requires us to work with it and to go through that process, because it starts with confusion and loss. And then a lot of feelings come up that we have to deal with. And it doesn't come in a linear way. So sometimes they say it's also a bit of a grief process, letting go of the old. It's not yet clear what the new is, and we have to find our way in it. Now, let me show you the foundation of understanding what change is and what transition is. If we look at transitions, I show you the bridges model. And the bridges model is based on the idea that if you are a change maker and you want change to happen, you will also have to understand what it needs in order to rally people along and help them through the transition to the new reality. Now here you see three different stages, starting on the left side, ending, losing, letting go. Change happens and something ended. It started with a loss. And then moving to sort of liminal space, sort of neutral zone, where the old is not there any longer, the new hasn't started. And then you move to the new beginning. So these three stages, being more aware of that and acknowledging that people go through those stages when change is happening, is an important part of making change successful. Quickly going through the different stages, and you will get the deck sent after this session. So important, remember, the first phase is really, there's no escape. You have to let go of something that was there and it's no longer there. So there might be all kinds of feelings involved, maybe anger or fear, denial, it's not true. There might be resistance going on, and people might ask for answers, like there are no answers, but at least we're without what was. Then you go to the neutral zone, and that's where still denial can take place and where morale might sink in, where if people get fatigue because of the constant change, or maybe they had to adjust already to so many changes and they have not again. So there's insecurity, and there might be a weak signal of creativity and optimism, because it also gives space for new beginnings. And then the third phase is the new beginning, where you as change makers also can help people to really embrace it, so they can feel energized, they want to learn more, and they can commit to it. Now, three stages that are important to keep into account when you're working with people around you in change. It could be that you're leading those people or that you're part of a change process. but at least the foundation of change being successful is that you are aware of the fact that people have their way of dealing with change, and you cannot speed that process up. Even if we want to hurry up because change has to happen, we cannot force it on people because they all have their own way of dealing with it. Now, what we want you to do is to explore in pairs again. So we're going to send you out for a couple of minutes in pairs. You meet someone new, hopefully the magic of Zoom, and then share what change you're currently leading or you're currently in. And if you think about the 3 phases, and I will put them back on screen. If you think about the 3 phases, which stage do you think people in your organization are in? And what behaviors makes you say that? And important is sometimes people are in different transitions at the same time. So there might be something going on in their private life and in their work life, and they both have different tempo and pacing, but there might be there. Or there might be 2 things at stake in an organization, and they have to deal with both. So we'll put the question in the chat, and we're going to send you out for this time 7 minutes to share quickly, intuitively, what is a change you're currently in your organization, or maybe even leading, and what stage of the 3 stages do you think people are in, and what makes you say that? Well, welcome back, everyone. Slowly getting back in. Hope you had a nice, quick exploration on what it takes to assess where people are in their transition. And just a couple of pointers on what people need in the different stages. And again, we're going to share the deck. Let me take you through the 3 phases and what people might need from you or might need in order to deal with transition. And also you can see I added some of the inner development goals. Of course, the inner development goals are not separate things. They're like all woven together. But in this particular parts, I singled out some of them. And of course, it always starts with you. Who are you, and from which place are you working with people through change and transition? Now, if people are in a let go phase, they need to be acknowledged in emotions, that you are patient and that you also can work with that and have the patience to name the emotions and acknowledge them. It's also repeating messages. So this is like communication skills. Being empathetic, holding space, and actually help them understand what is lost. So this is a phase in which you might think, oh, let's get done and over with, hurry up. No, this is a very important part in helping people through that first stage where they really have to get to terms with what is lost and what that means to them and how they feel about it. Now, the next part is the neutral zone, and that's hanging out a little bit in not really knowing where to go. What helps is chunking things up, making creating small goals and small deadlines. Do feedback loops, and important also celebrate successes, because then you set the tone and you role model what you want to see and where we can build, what we can build on. It helps companies' purpose as an anchor, why their work matters to the bigger scheme of things. Also be solving practical bottlenecks, take them out of the way, and see also where workload is divided. It's a very practical thing. This is a phase in which people need space to figure out what they can do and where they feel they have a sense of control, where in the first phase, many people feel they lose control. This is a phase where a little bit of extra control, that people feel more autonomous, helps. And here you see, I stated 4 of the IDGs in it: being, relating, collaborating, and acting. So this require like a mix of the IDGs to make this phase a success. And again, also celebrate progress, but also praise and establish new habits. So this is what I want to see. This is what we want to see. Yes, do more of this, and that will help people go in the right direction. And the last phase, this is the phase of the new beginnings. So this is objective setting, how it will also build into the overall objectives. It's also about the positive results of the change, so people know actually that they're making traction with what they're doing. Sharing the success stories and being part, how are you really doing? So this is the classic example of put your oxygen mask on before you help others. Now we're going to share this, but having said this, you see here all 5 come into play, and this is where change is lifting off and can also speed up. Let's hand over back to Maria.
Well, yes, just a very, very quick call of action for today. And if you want to know more about the hubs, the networks, or how to become a partner, you can just take a screenshot of this QR code and contact us. And we will try to help you navigating the world of IDGs and finding what you are looking for. Paul, do you have a call for action as well?
I would say practice. Have one conversation this week with a colleague or a family member, a relative, a friend that you feel is having trouble with change. Try to make space, listen, and give them what they need, and use the work and the deck to see what there might be at stake for them. Book.
Okay, so thank you so much, Paul and Maria, for those call to actions. I definitely encourage everyone to explore the exercise and the Inner Development Toolkit, also to continue your IDG journey after today. Yeah, I hope everyone had a good introduction to the IDGs and that you could experience a little bit what they could mean to you and to your business. Yeah, many thanks to Paul and Maria. That was definitely an amazing session, and I'm sure you inspired loads of people today. And with that being said, it's the end of today's session. On this slide, you will find some of our other events that we're hosting throughout B Corp month, including some live Q&As with B Corps and a masterclass on biodiversity and another one on ethical marketing. And we will be sending out the recording and the slides within a few days. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely afternoon still.